BMX bike.
This is not a good place for this.
Woo!
Just tell me a little bit about yourself. Where you're from, what your childhood was like.
You know, I grew up in Newton. My dad's 1 of 7, my mom's 1 of 9. So the families have a fair bit of, well, at least my dad's family has a fair bit of pull on each other. His oldest sister kind of, you know, is really influential in the family, and she said to my dad, like, you got to move Joey into the service school district. And so my dad found like the least expensive house in that area. I mean, they did a lot of work on the house before we moved in because they didn't want me eating like lead paint chips when I was little or something.
So you have, how many uncles and aunts do you have then?
Well, I still have 8 of the 9 on my mom's side, and my dad's all 7 are still around.
How many cousins do you have?
Well, the number I always had was that I have 64 people in my first family. That's not all cousins. That's cousins, aunts, uncles, and my 2 remaining grandparents. Somewhere around 30 cousins. I'm an only child. But,
so do you know the rest of your aunts and uncles? Do you know well, or is it?
I know all of them pretty well. Like every time we get together as a family, we always have a jam. Like
So do you get together like with a lot of your family? Like...
Yeah, we have at least annual gatherings. We recorded a family album.
Really?
One time, yeah.
That's sweet.
So we had like a person come in with a bunch of recording equipment and we sang.
Yeah, like, you've got such a big family. You've told me that like a lot of them live like on the land to a certain extent, or they like farm and they'll eat like food. Like, is that all of your aunts and uncles? Is that
no, that's some of my mom's side. You know, like one of my uncles, for example, he worked on an industrial farm for a while, and it really screwed up his lungs. And so he like refuses to eat food that is sourced from really far away or like not organic. And he's like below the poverty line. He lives in like a tiny house.
So does he like prefer that, or is that?
Well, I mean, he's quite poor, but I mean, I think a lot of times people think of organic food as being stuff that like people who have a lot of money go after. So there's some of it that's by choice, and then some of it, like, one of my uncles, they just can't afford to eat, so he shoots a deer and eats it. Like, and I think it's something that my grandfather, so he died shortly before I was born, and so I was named after him. He was Joe Wargo, so they named me Joseph. But he kind of taught a lot of the kids how to grow food because he believed in kind of carrying on that tradition, being able to sustain your family on some level without... You know, reliance on the food industry is an important thing. But many of them use them just to get their own food, which I would like to do at some point in my life.
So that intrigues you?
Yeah, I think that's something that my grandfather passed down, you know, knowing how to hunt, knowing how to grow food. And I think my uncle, who was the oldest in the family, was, you know, trying to spread the word about that in his community.
So if you were to go into kind of a sustainable living with hunting and growing your own food, would you go with your family, or would you go?
That's what I thought. I mean, like when I was in 5th grade, we were supposed to write a letter about what it was we were doing with our lives. Like, kind of as a hypothetical scenario, like you're 20 years down the road, and I said I was an eco-terrorist. So I ultimately said that I'd started my own state. I'd taken over Vermont and New Hampshire. I was in like the last folk music band in the country. I didn't really know a lot about like the factors that were causing the environmental crisis or mass extinction, but I knew that like cars were bad, so I was like, we were dismantling the auto industry.
No more cars.
But as I started getting older, I was like, oh, like a lot of my cousins kind of have the same ideas. I'm just like kind of watching the progression of like where my cousins are living, and I'm like, maybe we're all just gonna converge like somewhere
to one family
in upstate New York, and it'll be us you know, trying to carry on a lifestyle that I think are like, we're gonna do this because our grandfather, you know, sort of wanted the family to live like this.
Yeah.
And it so happens to satisfy a lot of my desires in my life in terms of trying to live in a way myself that contributes as little as possible to mass extinction, and trying to convince other people to try to move away from the practices that are causing mass extinction. It was just a wacko idea when I was 10, but now it's like, it makes, well, my grandfather's an engineer, and he's a little bit more, like he worked really hard in his life, but he was always smiling and telling bad jokes, and that kind of thing, kind of keeping everybody's spirits up. My grandmother read so much about Mao and about like communist China. I got like 2 books on Lenin and this book on Mao, and like a big stack of other stuff that I haven't really sifted through. But
that's really interesting.
I think the language is very different. Yeah.
The combination of living on the land and then like communism.
Yeah, they had an organization for kids too that was called Newman House, and it was kind of like teaching kids about. I think they taught a lot of political lessons there. So there was a lot of overlap between like the
not brainwashing.
Not brainwashing.
So if it was intriguing to you to live on the land.
Oh, it was intriguing.
Sustainable lifestyle, yeah.
I mean, so I thought about it. I wanted to do it a lot when I was younger. I actually think the process of digging through my grandfather's house when he was moving out of it. I mean, having conversations with them about the stuff that we'd found in Pop-Up's house, and seeing all that stuff, and getting these books about radical politics, and it just comes at a really interesting time because I've started to get obsessed with a lot of that stuff in the last couple of years. I came up with ideas about living with nature and stuff, and then learned that that's what my mom's family is all about. Right. And then I've started learning more and more about sort of these radical political organizations around the world, and now I've learned that like my dad's family was a radical political organization. Like,
talking about how you want to live a sustainable lifestyle, kind of, but that you feel like you're trapped by college debt to a certain extent.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. There's kind of 2 ways of looking at it. I think one is like, why the hell am I in college? Like, I should have been farming or something. And I understand why I'm in college. A lot of it is just pressure. Like, I knew what I wanted to do, but I also had a concept of what I had to do, and that was like do well in school, be in honors math, and stay up all night. And I think rowing was really what started to pull me in because I actually enjoyed rowing, and it started teaching me stuff about myself. I kept thinking about everything I was thinking about when I was younger in terms of what do I want to do with my life. Yeah. But the immediate path forward was just get into college, go faster in a boat, do well in school, stay up all night. Like if I don't make any progress towards this, organizing around ending mass extinction, that kind of thing, then my life is a failure. But it doesn't have to look like making your own country and overthrowing the automotive industry or something really grand like that. Now I have this education, or I'm close to graduating. I'm going to go get a job, and it's kind of like I could view it as, well, shit, I should have done something else, but I'm kind of here now, so I'm going to have to go learn in a way that's going to make me money. So I don't view it totally as a negative thing. Like, you kind of have to swing everything as a positive at a certain point, because otherwise, what's the point? Yeah. I think this is going to force me to go engage this, group of money-making people. Like, I'm going to have to go work in this industry, or in some industry, and therefore I'm going to have to learn about that industry.
So is the whole point of getting a job just to pay off your loans so you can eventually live?
I think that's part of it. And then the other piece of it is like, I'm going to have to go learn about the world. I think it's really hard for me to motivate anything with just like, oh, it's going to make me money.
Right.
Sort of engage the people who are super in power. It's not just a loss. It's also like learning about how this whole system works. Like, how does the capitalist system work? Like, I think I could just like go work for Bain and like shut my brain off or something. But so obviously we'd love it if Boston started making stuff for lower income people. But if you go work for a company that provides public infrastructure, maybe in that process I'll learn something about how stuff gets built, how stuff gets done, and some of the flaws in the system. I don't know. Yeah, I would say having loans has created a specific, has created this profit-driven goal that I have to pursue. Like,
so do you regret coming to Dartmouth?
I guess not on the whole. I mean, it's hard to really like regret something entirely.
It's like that you spent 4 years.
And I'm like, oh well, shit. I shouldn't have done that. I think my gender studies class was really informative to me. Taught me to start considering new variables in terms of what pieces of a person's environment affect them and in what ways. If I started eating off the floor or something like that, people would be like freaked out. But fundamentally, like, what is actually the problem with me eating off the floor? Or like, so like when I talk about wanting to live in a more sustainable environment and growing my own food and that kind of stuff, some people are like, oh, you're gonna have Kool-Aid, then you're gonna start killing people. And it's like, no, like, that's not.
Do you think it's more of like a reflection of like? Do you think it helped you learn kind of what you already knew about yourself, or what you wanted to do, or was it like this kind of opened up a door to like for me to lifestyle.
Yeah, I think it definitely gave me some new language. And it also introduced me to some new people and another piece of the culture. Like for example, I wanted to go live with my cousins and wrestle and grow food and play folk music together. I might have wanted to do that, but there was this force that made me stay in the system that I was in, which was like, you have to go to college, you have to get a job, you have to pay your loans. The kind of continued theme of why I'm not in complete despair is it's like it's forcing me to learn more about organization of the culture that I don't like as much. Because it enforces mass extinction, because people don't think about where their food comes from. I'm trying to consider for myself, how do I break out of this
So you're
scenario?
learning about the system.
But I'm learning about other
break out of the
people and
system.
why they don't break out of it. You can always leave, but the question is, what's going to happen to everybody else?
Wait,
Predominantly
learning about
white neighborhood in a suburb that was pretty wealthy, and we were able to get into an Ivy League school. Like, I think that's the scenario for a lot of us. And we can all think together. We can all give each other some new ideas, and then I won't take over Vermont, New Hampshire, but we'll go to Montana, and we'll all move in together. I don't know.